What's up, y'all? This is Josh, one half Statik Link, coming at you from Scratch DJ Academy here in New York City. Today I'm going to show you how to humanize some of your tracks in Ableton Live. So last week we talked with Dennis from Space Race about how to humanize and dequantize, degrade your tracks in Logic 9. Today I'm going to show you something very similar to that in Ableton. Now the cool thing about Ableton is it actually gives you some tools to be able to use to kind of automate and do that for you instead of dragging and moving things yourself. I'm going to show you both ways. I'm going to show you the manual way how to do it, and I'm going to show you how to use some of the tools inside Ableton to make it easy and give your tracks that human quality. So basically right here real quick, I just put together a fast Alright, so as you guys can tell, it's kind of rigid. It's kind of very machine-like, and it doesn't really have like a groove, especially the bells. If we listen to just the bells right now, you guys can kind of see it's very, very, very rigid. Alright? So first thing I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you the tools that are in Ableton that kind of do the humanizing and degridding factor for you. Alright? So if we go down here, if we click on our MIDI clip here, we can see down in the clip view window we have this thing called the groove tool, and you can see right here it says groove. All right. So what we want to do is we want to hit this little arrow here, and this is going to pull up a bunch of options. Now the cool thing about Ableton is it gives you a bunch of different options to use to kind of humanize your tracks with different qualities of past instruments. For example, the MPC drum machine. It was one of the most iconic hip-hop drum machines, and it was always off a little bit as far as the drums weren't programmed exactly on beat. Just like the SP1200, DJ Premier was one of the big things he used. It had a real rigid and very swing-type feeling to it in both. So they give you some of those options in there, and as you can see, you have stuff like rock and hip-hop, and all these different presets. So I encourage you to kind of play around with them. But today we're going to focus on the MPC because it's one of my personal favorites. All right. So when I click the MPC, the little arrow next to it, we get a bunch of different options to pick and choose from. All right. And basically what these are is these have to do with the type of swing or the type of degridding you're going to use. For example, you can see right here it says MPC 8. That stands for like an eighth note. If you scroll down a little bit, we see MPC 16, and it acts as a 16th note. All right. Now, when I clicked on that, you could kind of get some rigid sounding like clicks and pops. And what Ableton is doing is it's showing you kind of roughly how it's going to move things off the grid. All right, so if we go to something a little bit slower here, let's see if we can find a good one. There we go. There's a real one with a lot of swing, and you can kind of hear it's kind of swinging, and it doesn't really have a rigid feel to it. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and use that one. So what I want to do is just double click on it. And if you see when I double click on it there, it comes down on the very bottom here and it says MPC 8, and you have this little drop down menu here. And as you can see, I had one in here earlier that I was kind of playing around with, and it shows both of the options there. So you can go back and forth and try different ones out to get a good idea. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and pick the one we just chose, and I'm gonna select commit. Now you'll see when I hit commit, my bells here in the screen all moved. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and undo that. And I'm going to tap commit again, and you can see, particularly right here, this guy is jumping quite a bit. All right. So now let's go ahead and listen to that by itself. All right. So as you can see, sometimes it's off just a little bit. If we were to play with some drums, obviously, I'm sure you can tell right away. All right. So this is where you're gonna have to kind of play around and decide which ones you want to do. Now the cool thing about this is after you do that, you can make small adjustments as well. So for example, if we want to have this one kind of hit right on that kick drum, we can move it over and put it right back on the grid. All right, so all these are able to be moved around and manipulated. Now when you see something that kind of looks like this right here, where we have this note that's far off, chances are you're probably going to want to move it over. But a good one to a good idea to look at, and Dennis kind of talked about this in the last videos, you can see that some of these MIDI notes are just off a tad, not too much, just a very small amount, and that's what gives it its human element. That's kind of like a guitar player or a drummer playing or something that gives it more of a humanized feel. All right, so let's go ahead and play this. You can see you kind of move it around. Now, obviously I chose something, and the reason I chose something that was more drastic is to kind of give you a better idea. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna undo here real quick, and I'm gonna go back to the one I had a little bit earlier and show you how even a small change can kind of make a big difference. So I'm just gonna do our 16th note double up here. And you can kind of see right here, this one moved a little bit. And now if we play this, right? Pretty big difference, and it kind of has a little more groove. Also notice on the bottom, it actually changes our velocity as well. So this kind of gives it another humanized feel. Obviously a drummer, if he's hitting a hi-hat or an instrument, guy is playing guitar, he's not going to strike the same chord or the same strength every single time, so you get some variation there as well. All right? So once we have that, let's say that we kind of like the way this sounds. We can also do this manually as well. So if we want to make some changes, actually when you're down here in the MIDI view and the clip view here, you can kind of move these around. Now, if you notice when I'm moving it right now, it's very rigid when it's moving. A fast way to manually take things off of Ableton, just as a quick review, you can actually just hold Command. And when you hold Command after you have something selected, you can kind of see there it turns off the grid, and we can move this off a little bit if we wanted to. And if we zoom in here, you can see it's off the grid just a little bit. So there's two ways you could do this in Ableton. There's two ways to humanize your tracks. I definitely recommend watching Dennis's video going over with Logic. He goes into the importance of it a little bit more. We just want to give you a quick idea and another view at some other programs that offer the same thing, but even some better tools that make it a little bit easier for you. All right. So quick review. Ableton offers a couple tools that give you some options to give your tracks a more humanized or degridding type quality with the Groove tool. And also, if you want to manually do it and not use any of the tools, you can always hold Command to turn off the grid inside the MIDI view to kind of drag them around and move them off yourself. Okay? This has been Josh's Scratch DJ Academy here in New York City. Peace.